Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I, female, 28, and my husband Josh, male, 30, have been living with my sister Mary, female, 32, for the past 2 years. It's a long story, but I think I should unpack it for everyone. Basically, Mary has always had a bit of a bad streak in her. And while I don't mean to judge, she hasn't learned how to be a nice, considerate person during her time on Earth. Ever since we were children, Mary would bully me or make up stories to get me in trouble while doing shitty things herself. In high school, she was the typical mean girl and even kept our parents under her thumb by throwing tantrums. This transferred to all aspects of her life, from her work to her previous relationships. The thing is, distance had made the heart grow fonder, and after she moved out, Mary and I didn't have a better relationship. But all of that came crashing down on her 30th birthday. Literally, on the day of her birthday, a bunch of cops came to take her in for questioning. The field she was working in, finance, was already scummy in my opinion, but it came out that she was involved in some white-collar crime that involved misusing company assets. Ultimately, she only had to serve 4 months in a low-security prison, but all of her property had been seized, and she was homeless. Against my better instinct and definitely due to her emotional manipulation, I let her move in with me. It's been almost 2 years since then, and I swear to God she's driving me crazy. Imagine the worst college roommate ever. Add a sprig of entitlement and a dash of crazy, and you have Mary, the roomie. The most basic things about running a home are missed out by her. She doesn't clean up after herself, makes a mess when she cooks, usually just for herself, and throws her clothes everywhere. Our guest room looks like a pigsty. Yuck. The worst part is that I know that when it was her house, she was perfectly capable of doing all of this. It's just that since she's a guest here, she expects fricking hotel-style room service or whatever. My husband and I have urged her to move out several times, but we just hear the same excuses over and over. First, she said that she was processing the trauma of prison. After that, she said that she was busy with job hunting. Still not employed, by the way. In all this time, my parents have also been chipping in by sending her monthly payments for groceries to ensure she isn't a burden on us. However, none of this money is ever put towards the household and general expenses, and she mostly uses it for eating out and buying things. What's made it worse is that in the past few months, she's found a boyfriend, Chad, who's a carbon copy of her in terms of toxicity and bad house manners. Initially, I was hoping that having a boyfriend would mean that Mary would spend less and less time at our place, but it's actually swung the other way. Apparently, Chad thinks our house is very comfy and his crappy apartment doesn't cut it anymore. So 9 times out of 10, they end up back at our place after their dates. This is awkward, of course. I've tried to lay down some ground rules about bringing Chad over, but Mary thinks I'm treating her like some hormonal teenager. I mean, I am, but because she's acting like one, LOL. All of this has genuinely put a strain on my well-being and my relationship with my hubby. I know that he knows that I'm tired of this setup too, but I sometimes feel like he resents me for accepting the conditions of Mary living with us in the first place. February came recently, and my husband and I had planned an amazing Valentine's Day. Both of us are kind of introverted and wanted to organize a TLOTR marathon, as we're both fans of the series, and it was part of what brought us together. Kind of nerdy, I know. Anyways, we had informed Mary about 2 weeks in advance that we wanted a house to ourselves, and she said that she'd oblige, and Chad and her would go out to a nice hotel for the day. However, the evening before the 14th, she suddenly changes her mind and tells us that they were planning on coming over to my house and spending the whole day there. That meant them walking around, making a mess, and us having to deal with the awkwardness of Chad coming out of the bedroom to rehydrate. Yeah, this has happened before. I had had enough, and so did Josh, so both of us told her off. Mary, being Mary, didn't take this lightly and threw a massive tantrum. Both of us held our ground, though, and she had to accept that we won't be changing our plans last minute. We went to sleep in a good mood, happy that we finally had a victory over my bossy sister. When we woke up the next morning, though, all hell broke loose. I had sleepily walked down to the living room just to notice that our 60-inch flat screen was missing. Thinking that we had been robbed, I screamed, and everyone rushed into the living room. Josh looked just as bewildered as me, but Mary had a smug grin on her face. She said, "Oh, guys," in the most annoying tone ever, "this sucks. I guess you all won't be able to do your marathon here. What's going to happen? Maybe, just for today, you could go over to Chad's apartment and use his TV. I know you'd probably be imposing, but he's a nice guy. I'm sure he won't mind." With that sentence, I was 100% sure she had done something to the TV, and with one glance at Josh, I was certain he thought the same thing. We told her that we'd think about it and immediately opened up the home security system. Obviously, Mary wasn't smart enough to turn it off or cover her bases, so we saw her and Chad moving it out of the house and into a van in the middle of the night. Something snapped at that moment, and we both confronted Mary about it. She denied it at first. Imagine the audacity. And then eventually caved and screamed, "I only did it because you were being a-holes about my special day. I've been through so much, and I wanted to enjoy some time with this amazing new guy. So it's you that pushed me to this point. You should have just let me have my time alone." Josh, the quietest guy you've ever met, just stared at Mary for a solid 5 seconds, took a deep breath, and shouted, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You live in our house, eat our food, mess up our property, and you're the victim? Get out of here before I call the cops on you." I mean, wow, that was a long time coming. I backed him up on it, and we told Mary that she needed to move out by the end of the week, or we'd consider legal action. In tears, she called Chad and asked him if she could crash there. Chad showed up and picked her up after a few hours, glaring daggers at us. A few hours after that, we got a call from my mom that was wild. She told us that Mary had called her and told her that we had kicked her out of the house with no warning, no nothing. She also claimed that we were terrible hosts and always made her feel inferior due to her situation. It doesn't end here, because Mary had been taking around $600 extra from my parents ever since the start of the year. She told them that we had been making her pay rent. Even worse, my mom had no idea where the money she sent Mary had been going. I admit maybe I should have told her earlier, but when I explained my side of the story, she was livid. I could hear her shouting at Dad to teach Mary a lesson on the receiver, and it felt great. I also explained what had happened today, and I could sense that their patience was running low for Mary as well. I kept adding fuel to the fire until I heard from Mom that they were going to cut off all the money they were sending Mary, with only enough to survive as of now. She was getting half of what she got right now from Mom and Dad. I wholeheartedly supported this idea and then went around trying to figure out where the hell Mary had stowed our TV. I called her, and she curtly replied it was in Chad's storage shed a few hours away. We could pick it up when we had the guts to show up at Chad's place. I reported that if I didn't see the TV back at my door in a few hours, her next call would be from a jail cell. I got the TV back. All bark and no bite. After all this, my husband and I did end up having that marathon and went to bed feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off our shoulders. However, I got a furious text message from Mary while I was sleeping. Reading through it, I could tell my parents weren't bluffing when they said they'd cut Mary's payments, and they explicitly mentioned how badly she had treated me as part of the reason. Now, she thinks that since I ratted her out, I am obliged to pay her the amount our payments cut, to make sure she doesn't die or end up homeless. I ignored it, but now I kind of feel like an ass for pushing mom and dad as much on the call because Mary's just going to be taking out her frustrations on us 24/7 now. Part of me thinks this text message is just the tip of the iceberg because she loves to complain. Should I have been more diplomatic earlier? Update 1. So I was right about the tip of the iceberg thing because I saw Mary ranting on her socials about me. You know, those passive aggressive posts about trust and loyalty. Yeah, that kind. But I did read your comments and decided to go NC with Mary, basically blocking her from sending me messages. I hope that might give me some peace of mind. I won't be looking at her posts either. Update 2. I was catching up with my parents and I heard that Mary has been constantly pushing them to give her more money each month because Chad has started demanding rent. Surprise, surprise, the real world doesn't come with free housing. Their relationship is also quite toxic. My parents haven't agreed to it yet, but they're kind of closing to cave in. I don't know. Is it my place to tell them that they shouldn't and that Mary should learn to become independent again? Update 3. This one's a bit of a good update, guys. It's almost a month since Valentine's Day and Mary actually visited our house in person with no warning. But she wasn't being toxic or mean as I expected. She came to apologize and said that she was trying to get her life back on track. She's taken an entry-level job and has moved into her own place, and she and Chad are through. I guess this whole episode served as a wake-up call for her, and she's finally matured a little. I was happy for her, and both Josh and I agree that if she continued like this, we could go from NC to LC, and eventually maybe find a good bond with her. NTA, but you should have talked about this long ago, OP. I think that staying silent about Mary's behavior enabled her to be a bit of a bully. NTA and the fact that Mary had a wake-up call is exactly what I wanted to hear. People like her usually never find blame in themselves and are always the victim of circumstances. I'd say she's done the most important step of apologizing and finding blame in herself, and that's a good starting point. Next story. I, 22, female, live with my parents, 50 female and 52 male, and my two brothers, 18 male and 19 male. Since I turned 18 and started working, 50% of my salary goes to my parents to help around the house. I earn $1,100 minimum salary, and $550 is for them, the rest to spend as I want. I had the sweet illusion that they would do the same to my brothers when they started working, and I was irritated to learn that the two of them paid nothing at home. When I confronted my parents, they said that they earn very little because our interns, they earn $600, and that they would barely have money if paid half. I mentioned the idea of paying less then because I also wanted to have some for myself, but they said no because it was money they count on. For several reasons that I won't mention. ADD, health-related. My parents' house is adapted for me. It's not that easy for me to move, so I accepted even though I was annoyed. It's been about 3 months since I was promoted and my salary is double what I used to earn, $2,200. I knew that if I mentioned that I had been promoted to my parents, they would ask to increase the contribution, and I'm still pretty upset that they don't charge the other kids. So I didn't comment, and my schedule barely changed. I don't have exorbitant expenses, and I'm saving enough money to actually move and make all the necessary adaptations. My parents aren't in the best financial situation. They're tight, but they insist on not charging my brothers. That money would make a difference. They asked if I could pay 60%, but I said that our agreement was 50%, and I stressed again that their two children also work. Well, recently my mother couldn't get through to me on my phone and called the service, asking about me and if they could pass a message. I think one of the secretaries said something at the end like, "I'll pass the message to the manager then." I was a regular employee. My parents questioned me, and despite trying to deny it, they found out that I'm earning twice as much and started charging for the 50%, $1,100. When I said no, because it was unfair, they invited me to leave the house since I was not doing what was agreed, so I could very well live alone. I don't think they thought I would go. I'm at my friend's house. It's not easy. And I just paid for the 2 weeks of the month I was there, 275. Since leaving, they've been bombing me saying that they need me to help by paying the 550 or moving back, paying more. And now they're super tight and that I caused this whole fight by lying to them and not helping around the house anymore, knowing they were tight. AITA? NTA, your parents' finances are not your problem. When you were living at home, paying a portion for rent, etc., at your age was a great thing to do. Taking 50% of your pay wasn't. Not asking your brothers to help out and expecting you to only to help out, that's just insane. OP, moving out was your best option. If you can comfortably stay with a friend, do that. They have no right to your money. If they are having financial troubles, then it is on them to fix their own problems. They don't sound like very good parents, to be honest. I couldn't imagine doing my own kids that way. I want them to have bright futures, and taking money from them that they are trying to save up would be horrible. Again, NTA, focus on your future and let them focus on theirs. NTA, but you need to stay on your own and not under their roof. They chose to have children. It's their responsibility to raise said children. You're all adults now, so it being their house, it's fair that they would charge for rent, utilities, and food. If you're paying more of your paycheck percentage-wise than your brothers, it isn't fair. If you're paying more than is fair for a home with 5 adults living in it, it's not fair. You are old enough and clearly doing well enough to live on your own. Don't bend because their finances are tight. They can figure that out on their own. You need to live your own life. Next story. Our cat got out and we discovered him sitting on a tree. It was high but close enough to the roof that I, 28, male, figured he must have jumped over from the roof and he could jump back. He was meowing loudly. I don't know why, but my wife, 26, thought it was a cry for help and decided to climb up to get him down. I told her he was fine and would come back down on his own, and if he didn't, we could think of something else, like getting a mattress to break his fall. But she didn't listen to me and tried to climb it. I told her to at least wait until I can borrow a ladder from a neighbor since we didn't have one, but she said if we waited too long, he'd jump and hurt himself. He was being very loud at that stage. I said, he's just being dramatic, and if he's not, let's just think of something else because the tree was very high for a human. She tried to climb up from the ground, but it didn't work, so she went inside and climbed up on the roof from a window and then climbed from there to the tree. The whole time I was yelling at her what a stupid idea that was, because there was no way she'd catch her footing, and there was a serious chance the branch he was on wouldn't be able to support her weight. But she didn't listen to me and fell down when she tried to steady herself on the branch. She had a major cervical fracture, head injury, and other broken bones and came this close to breaking her neck. She had to get 2 surgeries and it was extremely anxiety-inducing. 2 weeks later, she is still in the hospital but on the mend. She started joking about the fall and joked that it was probably because of our black cat's bad luck. At that point, the anger over her recklessness that I hadn't felt because I'd been so worried came to the surface, and I told her it was entirely her own fault. She got defensive and said she couldn't have predicted it, at which point I yelled that I predicted it and told her exactly what would happen 5 times before she went ahead and did it. And the cat got down on his own before the ambulance got there anyway, just like I said. Then she started crying and I started crying and she said I was being horrible, but I said I can't just not point out how wrong she was for making a very reckless choice that nearly killed her, gave her very painful and possibly long-term injuries, and made me and her parents think for hours that her life was on the line. I got back and her parents called me to tell me what an ass I was and that she told them to tell me not to come back to the hospital unless I apologize and never bring it up again. But I need to talk this through with her and can't just let it go. NTA, your wife did something that was both incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid, without regard for how it would affect you and your family. And there doesn't seem to be a shred of remorse for what she put you all through. What did she expect? You would be all, "It's okay, honey," forever? Your feelings matter too. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.